So if you like playing as a mage or a sorceress in games and you want to play that in Wuchang Fallen Feathers, today's your lucky day because today we're going to be discussing my class guide for Wuchang Fallen Feathers one-handed sword, which is also going to be the best class for when it comes to playing as a spellcaster, since this class is going to have all the weapons that are going to be scaling with magic and give you increased spell power. So without further ado, let's discuss how this build is going to come together. It's a very fun class because it's going to allow you to cast so many different spells. You're going to rely very little on actually attacking enemies with your blade. Instead, you're going to be making use of magic most of the time. So if that sounds like fun to you, let's talk about how you can build this class. Let's first start things off with the weapon we're going to be making use of. The weapon is going to be the Astral Blade, and the reason why we're using this one is because it is going to scale with magic. It's only going to scale with magic, so if you want to increase the power of this weapon, you are going to want to level up as many magic nodes as possible. Now, there aren't that many magic nodes in the skill tree. There's only two places you can find them. That's going to be on the far left-hand side and also the far right-hand side. That's going to be where you find all your magic nodes. No other skill tree is going to have magic, so you're going to need to focus on those. Now, you can get this weapon by defeating the Great Centipede, and this weapon is going to, of course, be very useful for spells because it is going to give you spell power bonus plus magic bonus, which is obviously going to be very valuable. So in terms of the skill tree, let's discuss how we're going to set this up. Now, it's important to note, because you're going to be focusing on two sides of the skill tree, it's up to you to balance it how you like. The left-hand side is going to give you a lot of obviously magic buffs. It's also going to give you a lot of potion buffs. So if you find that you don't have enough healing and you need to heal more, and you also maybe find that your spells just aren't being able to be casted fast enough, the left-hand side is going to be more your thing. Whereas the right-hand side is going to be more applicable for the actual weapon itself in terms of its like perks, its abilities, its disciplines. So you're going to want to level up that as well. Let's start things off on the right-hand side. Look at the first thing, biting time. This is going to be what makes this weapon so great, or this class so great for spell casting, is this is going to give you one stack of Skyborn Might every so often. Now, if you don't know what Skyborn Might is, essentially Skyborn Might is this game's version of mana. You are going to gain Skyborn Might in various different ways. It depends on the class you use. They're going to be earned in different kinds of ways depending on what class. When it comes to the one-handed sword, you're going to be gaining it passively. So just by doing nothing, you're going to be gaining Skyborn Might, which is very, very valuable. And you're also going to be gaining it by doing certain attack combos. So when you do end up attacking a certain amount of times, you will be gaining it. You'll also gain it when you do end up perfectly dodging enemy attacks. And this is why this class is going to shine so nicely, because you're going to be constantly having a supply of Skyborn Might to cast your spells. Now, moving on, we're also going to be making use of the next perk, which is going to be Wind Force. And what Wind Force is going to do is you can consume a stack of Skyborn Might to quickly strike with a charged heavy attack one-handed swords. This isn't that valuable when it comes to this weapon because you're not going to be going for heavy attacks as often. It's more valuable when it comes to other weapons. I think every weapon class has this kind of perk. I don't think it's that important with this weapon class, so you could skip it if you wanted to. Now, you're going to notice there's basically two paths you can head on over on the skill tree. There's going to be the lower half, which is going to be mostly feathering skills, which you're probably not going to want to pick up, except you are going to have to head down this way eventually to pick up the Swift Blade. Now, if you don't know what Swift Blade is, every class has this. This is going to be the weapon mastery. You need to level these up as often as you can. You're typically going to be able to level them up when you end up finding the red feathers. There's different tiers of red feathers which you'll find for defeating bosses. You'll find them in chests. You'll find them lying around everywhere. Make sure you pick those up because that is going to be how you are going to level up your weapon mastery. Now, I like to move on the top half of the skill tree, pick up all these magic nodes. You'll also find a Swift Blade node there to level up your mastery. Then you can end up picking up your various disciplines. Now, I like to make use of all the disciplines because there are going to be benedictions which are going to allow you to do more damage the more disciplines you have unlocked. This is more of a late game thing, so in the beginning of the game, I would probably ignore this, focus more on the center of the skill tree. You can always pick these up later because they're not that important, but later on you can pick them up as they are going to allow you to do more damage if you want to go for the benediction build. Now, moving on down, we're going to pick up the Ascended Wrath skill. This is going to, while at 90% madness, the final attack of one-handed sword attack combo will gain you Skyborn Might if it hits an enemy. That's going to give you more Skyborn Might, which means you're going to be able to cast more spells, which is obviously going to be quite necessary. You also need this to just carry on leveling up to the right-hand side of the skill tree, so make sure you pick up there. Now, if you do want to pick up the Swift Blade on the bottom half of the skill tree, instead of picking up the feathering perks, it's better to kind of head on down this path after Ascending Wrath and kind of head backwards and pick up the Swift Blade there. You are going to have to level up once on the feathering skill tree regardless, because you're going to need to pick this up at one point or another. You can always skip in the early game and pick it up later on when you feel like you have enough red feathers to upgrade it, but for the most part, you can ignore this at least for a while. Now, again, if you do want to use the benedictions that are going to increase your damage for more disciplines you have unlocked, you're going to want to head on down here as well and pick up this Swift Lunge discipline. Again, it's not crucial in the early game. This is only if you're going for the benediction path. Otherwise, you can ignore it for the time being. Now, when you move on further to the right-hand half of the skill tree, you're going to notice once again, there's going to be an upper half bracket and a lower half bracket. Upper half bracket is going to be where you're going to be able to find all the magic nodes. So you're definitely going to want to pick up those because obviously with more magic, you are going to be able to do more damage and your spells are going to be more effective. So you're going to want to pick those spells up when you can. So make sure that you do end up sticking on the top half of this bracket and picking up all those magic nodes, because there's not going to be that many places you can find magic nodes actually. So it's going to be difficult to actually find later on. So you're going to want to pick those up when you can. You're also going to once again be able to pick up the Swift Blade. You're going to see another Swift Blade mastery here. You can level that up to 3 times. So make sure you level those up whenever you can. And again, if you want to go for the Benediction route, you're going to want to pick up these other disciplines like Slicing Zephyr. And you can also make use of the Vanguard Breaker, which is actually the discipline that I like to make use of. The only downside of this discipline is you're going to have to pick up a few feathering perks because you're going to have to level downwards to pick this up. You don't have to use this one. I just personally like it. This is a personal preference one. These disciplines aren't that crucial for the build. Then you're going to want to head on all the way to the far right of the skill node. You will notice there will be a magic node up here, and the one at the top here will kind of break off the main path. It is going to be giving you +5 for magic instead of just +1. Most perks are going to give you +1 every time you level them up, but if you do end up leveling up these bigger nodes, they're going to give you +5 rather than +1, and it's only going to cost you 1 red mercury essence, so it's basically 5 for the price of 1. So you want to pick those up, especially when it's magic, because magic is going to be a very valuable stat for this build, so you're going to want to pick that up, of course. Now at this point, let's talk about the left-hand side of the skill tree. Now, the first thing you're going to want to pick up here is going to be Skyborn Call. This one you're going to have to pick up anyway regardless. What this is going to do is increase the maximum stack of Skyborn Might by 2. Now, that's very valuable because when you start out, you are only going to have 1 Skyborn Might. If you want to cast spells that cost 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 Skyborn Might, you are going to need obviously more Skyborn Might in order to cast them. There's also going to be some disciplines which are going to require more Skyborn Might, so you're going to want to pick this up probably right away. I think this is probably one of the best perks to pick up as you start. You're going to be playing a spellcaster build. This is essential. Pick this one, the first perk you can if you can. Then what you can do is you can move on a little bit up here and pick up the Steel Resolve perk. This is going to give you, well, 50% madness. You will gain 1 stack of Skyborn Might upon deflecting enemies or blocking the enemy. So if you parry them, you'll obviously be able to do this too. And that's just going to give you more Skyborn Might. And since we are a spellcaster, Skyborn Might means more mana, and more mana is very valuable for us. So pick that up whenever you can. You're also going to want to head on the opposite direction straight down, where you're going to be able to get Unbroken Focus. And now, the reason why you want to get Unbroken Focus is this is going to allow you to, when at 90% madness, the buff provided by Biding Time will not decay below 3 stacks, which means that the passive Skyborn Might that you're going to generate will not end up being lost, and you'll be able to hold on to it. So when you do end up passively generating Skyborn Might, you won't passively end up losing it as well, and that's going to be obviously very valuable for this build. It's going to let you stack up on lots of Skyborn Might, so whenever you go into Confrontation, you pretty much have a full stack ready to go to cast your spells, and that's going to be just very, very convenient for you. Now at this point, you can pick up these bonus perks depending on what spells you're using. Things like Fiery Embers or Withering Torch or Crackling Will, these are all going to essentially increase the potency of certain status effects like Burn, Corruption, Paralysis, and so on. Now this is going to depend on what spells you use. Obviously, if you find yourself only using burn spells, or you prefer burn spells, then you only need the Fiery Embers perk. If you find yourself maybe making use of a lot of corruption spells, maybe pick up the Withering Torch. It depends on what spells you use. You can just pick them all up, obviously, but that's going to be a drain of a lot of red mercury essence, but it is nice to have if you do find yourself using a variety of spells, or you just want to experiment and have the most out of each of them. You can pick these all up. However, if you're going to be playing as efficiently as you can, you're probably going to find yourself spamming 1 or 2 spells more than the others, so picking up only 1 or 2 of these perks will give you probably the best bang for your buck and help you level up some more important stats, at least for the time being. Then just you're going to want to head on further left here. Obviously, when possible, pick up as many of these mana capacities and mana potency upgrades as you can. Then also what you can pick up is Health Siphon. While at 90% madness, the final strike of weapon light attack combos will restore health on hit. That's just going to give you a little bit of kind of like leech on attack, which is just nice to have. Then you want to also make sure you pick up the Rapid Temperance when possible. This one is going to, while 50% madness, accelerate its effects of Temperance on your weapon, enhancing them faster than usual. So basically, this is going to speed up the animation of when you do end up using your Temperance. Now, the Temperance buff, you're going to be able to equip by going on to your inventory, and this is going to be equipped by going down all the way to your items, and you're going to want to equip the Temperance icon there, and that's going to essentially allow you to enhance your weapon with bonus abilities and give them things like either burning, or it's going to depend on the weapon you're using. It will depend what kind of enhancement you will have, but Temperance is going to be quite nice because the Temperance buff we're going to have on this weapon is going to be the Bone Needle, which is going to enhance the use of your magic. Now, to pick up this Bone Needle, you're going to want to head on straight down from here, and this is going to eventually lead down to Fury of the Skyborn, and Fury of the Skyborn is going to also be a perk that, while at 50% madness, the Skyborn Might cost of Echo Spells is going to be reduced by 1 stack. That's very valuable to have. This perk is actually a must-have, and the reason why is when you do end up defeating bosses, you're going to get this Echo Spell, and a lot of these Echo Spells are actually very, very good. So when you do end up picking up this perk, they will cost 1 less to cast, which means you're going to have more mana or more Skyborn Might, and that's going to allow you to cast more spells more frequently, so definitely want to pick that one up. Also, conveniently, the next node you can pick up here is going to be the Bone Needle Magic, and this is going to be accessed via your Temperance menu, where you'll be able to put the Bone Needle onto the weapon, and you can access this by using it as whatever your button is to access your items. If you equip it as an item, the same way you drink a potion or you use an item there, you can access your Temperance, which will put on a buff for your weapon, which will allow you to do a lot more damage with your spells. spells and have a lot more effectiveness when you use your weapon as well. So moving on now, you're going to want to pick up these alterations. This is going to unlock extra acupoints, which you can access via your Temperance menu. I'll discuss more of that later, but pick that up. You're also going to want to pick up the Temper perk right below that. That's going to give you +1 Temperance charges, which means you can use your Temperance buff more times before you end up running out. It's important to note your Temperance charges will refill every time you visit the shrine and rest at them, so you don't have to worry about them being something that you're going to run out of. You will be able to generate them more as time goes on. Then if you head on a further left, you're going to be able to pick up Skyborn Call 2, and Skyborn Call 2 is going to increase the maximum stack of your Skyborn Might by 1. So you're going to want to pick this up because it's going to give you more Skyborn Might, which again is going to allow you to cost more expensive spells and also just have more Skyborn Might, which you can store up for later on. Now, another one you're going to want to pick up is going to be Skyborn Resilience. This one's actually very important if you're going to use the high level spells. Now, the high level spells are kind of iffy. I'm personally not a big fan of using the ones that cost like 4 and 5 because it just takes so damn long to cast these spells. And when it comes to especially bosses, some of the bosses in this game, they attack so fast that it's very, very hard to cast the expensive spells. I don't feel worth it in most cases. Like, they do decent amount of damage, I guess, but you're often going to get hit and you're going to take a ton of damage if you end up casting these, especially in the late game with some of the speed of the later game bosses. But if you really want to use some of those flashier spells because they just look very cool and you want to use them, then you're going to want to pick up Skyborn Resilience, because Skyborn Resilience is going to make it so that spells that require 4 or more Skyborn Might will increase your tenacity, making these spells more difficult for enemies to interrupt. That's going to be very important if you want to go for a build like this. Then further on, you're going to want to see another charge here that's going to give you extra Temperance charges. Pick that one up. It's just called Temper. Now, a very important part of the skill tree, which you're going to want to unlock as well, is obviously the Skyborn Call, which is going to give you more Skyborn Might, which is going to further increase it to its maximum capacity, I believe, of 5. But you're going to want to head on further up. There's going to be a bunch of magic nodes here. Remember what I said earlier, magic is going to be quite a rare node to find. There's not many places you can find magic. This is one of the few places you can find a big clump of them. They're going to have a bunch of clumps that you can level up 5 times. So every one of these you can level up 5 times, which is going to give you +5 magic. There's also going to be 2 bigger nodes here, which are both going to give you +5 magic. So that's a whole bunch of magic nodes. Pick these up because it's going to increase the damage of your spells as well as your weapon by quite a significant amount. So you're going to want to level up those a bunch. Then you're going to want to move on further down to the left here. You're going to see a few more magic nodes. You're going to want to pick those up, and you can also end up picking up the mana potency upgrades here as well. If you do end up defeating all the boss in the game, and if you are at that stage, you probably don't need this guide anyway, but if you do end up defeating every boss and get all the chisels, you can actually pick up this last alteration perk here, which is going to give you access to all of the acupoints on your Temperance. In terms of beyond this point, because if you do end up leveling up quite a bit, if you get to the very late game, you probably will be able to get more skill points that you can actually invest in all these trees. At that point, you're just going to be able to pick any skill tree you want. You can level up maybe as a secondary weapon, a different skill tree, pick up some either vitality and health upgrades on the way. You can ignore strength and agility nodes. They're not going to help your weapon out very much, so ignore those. But at this point, if you level up any other skill trees beyond this point, you're pretty much doing it to level up a secondary weapon. And you also, if you want to just make sure you are getting the most out of it, you're probably going to want to focus on things like endurance and vitality, since that's going to be applicable for you regardless of what weapon you end up using. Now let's take a look at the Temperance menu, because this is going to obviously be what I was discussing earlier on when it came to Temperance. So when it comes to the bow needle, we can be making use of the bow needle magic, and this is going to be used to boost your spell damage while wielding this weapon. Obviously, it's going to be very valuable, and that is going to be utilized by accessing it in your items menu when you equip it. So you can pop this before you fight a difficult boss or a bunch of difficult enemies, and you're going to get a bonus on your attack damage for a time being. You'll see your weapon will glow blue. You'll also rub your sword between your elbow, and this will obviously indicate that you have activated it. Now, in terms of acupoints, I like to make use of the acupoint Gleaming Stone Needle magic, and this is going to tap into your acupoint to moderately increase the magic control of the weapon. And since this weapon is going to be obviously focused on magic damage, that is going to be quite valuable. Then I also like to make use of the Shadow Stone Needle magic. This is going to increase your magic damage slightly, which is obviously going to be quite important as well for this build, because anything that increases magic is going to increase the weapon's damage as well as your spell damage. So put those on. The last 2 slots, if you do end up getting this far, you can put on things like the Plume Stone Needle Temper. This will basically increase the attack power gain from Temperance, which is obviously going to increase your Temperance overall effectiveness. The last one you can unlock if you manage to get all the way to this point is going to be the Everlight Stone Needle Continuity, and this is going to basically increase the duration of how long the Temperance is going to last, so it can last a bit longer before it ends up running out. Now let's take a look at what spells I like to use. Now these spells are going to be unlocked in various stages of the game, so I'm going to give you just a couple that are very good. You can decide based on which ones you have, which ones are good to make use of, and which ones you're going to maybe skip out on. One of the nice ones you can use very early on, which will be one of the first you unlock, is Vorpal Blade. And the nice one with this is only cost 1 to use. So if you have a whole bunch of Skyborn Might stacked up, you can actually spam these out very frequently. It's just a nice way of doing a whole bunch of spell damage without having to engage the enemies. So you can just do this from afar and just kind of snipe enemies off. It's very cheap. It's very effective. It's a nice one to pick up early on. Now, another very nice one you can pick up is going to be Divine Ward. Now, Divine Ward you can actually access by the Panda Bear. He's going to be like a kind of a shopkeeper where you can kind of trade bamboo shoots to. You can buy this from him for, I believe, 3 bamboo shoots. And this is going to, for a time being, reduce the amount of damage you take. It's actually very quick to cast. It's quite a nice one to pick up. Definitely great in the early game. Pick that one up when you can. Another very nice spell, which you will be able to find fairly early on, is going to be the Burning Flames. This is basically going to make you leap backwards and then launch a bunch of projectiles, which are going to do a bunch of burn damage, which is very nice to have. So definitely make use of that one in the early stages of the game. There is going to be an upgraded version of this, which I think is even better, but this one you're only going to be able to unlock at literally at the very end game. That was going to be the Echo of Xiaoyang Z. This one is going to basically just be a much better version of the Burning Flames, but it's only going to be unlocked at the much later stage of the game, so you're probably not going to unlock that one for a while. Another very nice one to make use of is the Echo of Bing Zhang. That one is going to just basically give you like a big dart projectile. You can just quickly dart out and do some big damage. I like making use of that one a lot. Another very nice one you're going to unlock very early on is Echo of Dutanga. That one you can make use of. It's very nice just to do a big AoE attack, which can also damage a lot of enemies around you. You're going to want to get that one when you possibly can. Another very nice one is Echo of Liu Cheng. This one's going to be very similar to Echo of Dutanga, except this one's going to do frost damage. It's going to be a big sweeping attack with a kind of like magic staff, which is going to do a lot of frost damage as well. Definitely a nice one to pick up when possible. And one of my personal favorites, this one you're going to only unlock at the later stage of the game, however, is going to be the Echo of Bomagas. And this is going to basically give you kind of like a little bubble or protective shield that can tank a bit of damage. That one's going to help improve your survivability quite a bit. So you're definitely going to want to pick that one up or make use of that one when you do end up unlocking it. You'll get it from defeating a main story boss. So it's not really missable, so don't worry about that. Now let's talk about the benedictions that I like to use with the Astral Bait. Starting the first one, I like to make use of Skyborn Ward. And what that is going to do is basically, once you get Skyborn Might, reduce the damage taken for a while. And since we're going to be constantly generating Skyborn Might, we're going to be taking a little bit less damage quite often, which is quite nice. And for the next one, I'd like to make use of Sheng Lasting Alacrity. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to extend the duration of damage avoidance when triggering Alacrity. Alacrity is basically just a stat that is going to help make it so that enemies are going to have a more difficult time disrupting your spell combos. So when you are going to use your spells, you're going to be able to have bigger windows to avoid damage, which is going to be quite nice because you're going to be constantly spamming spells. Being able to avoid damage is obviously going to be very important. Then the last one I like to make use of is Wei Skyborn Magic. And what this is going to do is when you get Skyborn Might, it's going to increase the damage of your spells for a short amount of time. And well, since we're constantly generating Skyborn Might, we're going to be doing a little bit more spell damage, which is obviously going to be very valuable for this build. Then in terms of our pendants, what I like to make use of is the Sun Pendant. This one is going to increase the potency of your spells. You're only going to find this one at the later stage of the game, so just be aware of that. If you don't have this one, anything that can increase things like your stamina or just whatever you find that is going to be relevant for the enemies or boss that you're currently facing, you can put on there. Another nice one to have is the Bird Pendant. This one is going to increase the weapon's magic damage, which obviously, considering we're all about magic here, this one is going to be obviously quite valuable. Then I like to make use of the Twin Infant Pendant. This one I just use in pretty much all my classes. You don't need this one that much since stamina is not a huge problem with this weapon, but you know, you often do need stamina regardless. This one is going to increase the stamina recovery speed, so you're going to want to put that on when you make use of pretty much most of the classes, I think. So overall, when it comes to this weapon class, I think it is a great weapon class for people that want to play as a mage. It is going to allow you to pretty much never have to really use your sword that much. I find myself in a lot of boss fights, a lot of confrontations, I was just pretty much always using spells. I was never really using my weapon. The weapon itself, I would say, is a lot weaker as a weapon than something like the longsword. However, this big bonus is the fact that you can cast spells much more effectively, which the longsword can't. But if you want to actually do stabbing and poking and dodging, this weapon is going to perform worse than the longsword. However, the big bonus, you're going to be able to do a ton of magic damage. You're not going to actually have to fight with your sword as often, which is kind of the whole point of the weapon. So it shouldn't matter that much since you're just not going to be using the sword a whole lot. Overall, a bit of a clunky weapon to use when it comes to the actual sword fighting, but when it comes to magic, this is going to be a very powerful build, and it is going to be able to pretty much take down big bosses, a lot of endgame bosses, without actually having to engage in like actual melee combat with them. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the guide. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comment section below, what is your favorite class to currently play in Wuchang Fallen Feathers, and which class would you like to see me cover next? I'll see you guys again next time. Take care, everyone, and bye bye.